Good evening, councillors. Councillor Suez will say prayers.
Dear God, we seek your help with our affairs today. Bless this meeting with your intelligence and help us to make the best use of our own. We are of diverse opinion here, yet we wish to mend our differences and reach agreement satisfactory to all. Please share a little of your wisdom with us to help us to do right by all concerned. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Welcome to this first meeting of the Council. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Toilets are situated outside the meeting room opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you're told it's safe to do so. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this room, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Finally, can members and officers please ensure that you press the microphone for speaking and turn off when you finish. Right, I'll move to the agenda now. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies so far for Councillor Nunn and Councillor Cresswell. Thank you.
Any other apologies? To dispensation to all members for item BC 19.7, draft joint local plan. Are there any other declarations of interest? Thank you. Move to item 3, BC 19.5, to confirm the minutes of the annual meeting held on 22nd May 2019 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy, please? Could I have a proposer, please? John Ward? Thank you. Could I have a seconder? Adrian Osborne, thank you. Can we take a vote for the minutes, please? For accepting the minutes. That's carried. Thank you. Point 4, BC 9.6, announcements from the Chairman and Leader. I have no announcements other than what's in paper, BC 19.6, for noting. Thank you. Councillor Ward, anything to report?
Thank you, Chairman. I thought I'd take this opportunity to provide you all with a brief update on what the District Councils Network has been doing on behalf of districts and boroughs in the country. As you will be aware, there are many pressing issues for local government, and it is gratifying to note that there is widespread consensus, irrespective of who controls the councils, about what we require from central government and our frustrations that there is continuing uncertainty and delay over progress with funding and a finance settlement. The DCN board meeting that took place on the 5th of June was the first since the elections and covered a lot of ground. And so I just thought I'd give you a quick update of a few of the key items. And we noted that a number of permitted development changes to encourage greater flexibility for the use of town centre buildings came into effect last month. Also, the government is now considering the initial expressions of interest for the future high street funds submitted by local authorities earlier in the year, and the DCN will be lobbying for early decisions on these. The continued slow speed of progress on Housing Infrastructure Fund bids by Homes England remains a source of frustration to many DCN members. 2 briefing papers were prepared for the Planning Minister in May on speeding the build-out of consented housing sites and also on the housing land supply. The Environment Select Committee invited the DCN to provide evidence on the implications of the waste strategy for local authorities following a written evidence submission. And I have to report that none of us, whoever controls the councils, likes the free garden waste collection proposal. Written evidence was submitted to the MHCLG inquiry into local government finance and spending review. And also a final written response to the Treasury Select Committee inquiry on the impact of business rates on business was also submitted. Following the lifting of the Housing Revenue Account borrowing cap, the DCN commissioned a study of its impact since implementation and to gain an understanding of what is needed for districts to fully explore its potential. This is of particular interest to Babergh and Mid-Suffolk, and the findings are relevant to us. The initial headline findings are that lifting the HRA cap has freed up a significant number of stockholding councils, about 2/3 in fact of the stockholding councils, to increase their house building programs. However, there are ongoing barriers to building or using the increased borrowing, and these include the impact of the right to buy, the affordability of schemes making future revenues more precarious, the cost and availability of land, the appetite for borrowing and risk, particularly amongst elected members, and also linked to the perceptions of capacity to deliver effectively. And finally, there is the impact of competition with the private sector. So as you can see, there has been a lot going on, and the DCN is being listened to by central government, which is good. Moving on then, onto Bellevue, you will have seen in the press release recently about the official opening of the new skate park and multi-use games area in Bellevue Park that took place on Saturday. There were a lot of people there to enjoy the party we put on, and by all accounts, everyone thoroughly enjoyed it. Babergh has invested £150,000 in these 2 facilities, and further improvements are being planned. This shows that we are committed to the park and are not neglecting it, despite ill-founded comments in the press and online. And finally, later this week, I'll be going on a DCN study tour to Roeselare in Belgium, which has implemented many of the recommendations in the 2013 Grimsby Review into the future of the High Street. The DCN will produce a publication following the tour, and I will provide a report at next month's council meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Moving on to item 5, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with council procedure rules.
Thank you, Chair. We received 2 petitions. The first is 77 valid signatures regarding planning application DC 19-01712 into Hintwisham, and the second was 144 valid signatures regarding planning application DC 19-01873 in Boxford. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 7, questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 8, BC 19-7, Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Draft Joint Local Plan, Preferred Options. Before I invite Councillor Arthey to introduce the report, I would like to remind Council that the report is, as it stands, before going out to consultation, apart from typographical and factual errors. Members should focus on the policies within the report and avoid getting into any specific issues relating to members' wards. Those matters should be raised and fed in as part of the consultation. Thank you. I would like to invite Councillor Arthey, Cabinet Member for Planning, to introduce paper BC 19-7 and to move the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Councillor Arthey.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, you have in front of you the draft local plan, preferred options document. It is the second Regulation 18 stage following the options consultation in 2017. You may remember we had originally intended being at this stage over 2 years ago, and I have been a fierce critic of the much delayed progress of the new local plan. I'm pleased to be able to bring this draft document to my first council meeting as Cabinet Member for Planning, but I cannot take much credit for something that has required a great deal of work over a long period of time, and particularly since the options consultation stage of 2 years ago. This plan has been informed by the responses to that consultation, by a developing evidence base, and by the latest NPPF. We must have a compliant and up-to-date plan. The strategic policies in the first part of the plan and the development management policies in the second part have been through a series of local plan working group meetings, and the whole document was the subject of last Friday's briefing session for members. As I am sure you are aware, the joint local plan provides for 7,500 new homes in Babergh, which equates to 420 a year. And the third part of the plan suggests areas where they could be built. This part of the plan includes the site allocations and maps. I'm sure members will welcome policies that address issues such as the environment, sustainability and energy provision, but will be particularly interested in the provision of affordable housing and infrastructure requirements. The plan incorporates evidence from the infrastructure delivery plan, which will be published alongside the proposed consultation. You are not being asked to approve this plan for adoption. I'm asking you to approve it for consultation. During that consultation, you may well be involved in preparing or helping others to prepare responses. That might be individual residents, communities, parish councils, and various groups and organisations. The consultation is open to everyone, and in due course, when all the responses have been considered, you will then have the next stage in the production of the new joint local plan, the draft submission version, in front of you for approval. Some people have suggested this is not ready to go out yet, but as I have said, this is a consultation stage, not a final submission. A couple of months' delay now will just add a couple of months to the final adoption of the plan. There have also been comments that the consultation period falls over the summer holiday period. The minimum statutory period for consultation is 6 weeks, but we will be looking at 8 or even 10 weeks to give plenty of opportunity to comment. Whilst I'm presenting the plan, I didn't write it, so I hope you don't mind if I direct any questions on the content of it to Robert Hobbs. Finally, I commend it to you and ask for your approval to put it out to consultation in July for a period of 10 weeks. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Arthey. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Ward. Did you want to say anything? Thank you. This is now open for questions and debate. Thank you. Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Chair. Just to endorse what Councillor Arthey has said about the consultation period, I really would like that to go to 10 weeks in order to allow parishes that don't meet during the summer to have a chance to give it due consideration.
Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of questions, really. Within the document itself, it mentions certain bits of evidence base, but we don't know what those evidence bases are. For instance, the infrastructure delivery plan will only be made available when it goes out for consultation, so we don't know how that impacts upon the document and whether it makes it more valued or less valued. Housing need is not covered other than the arbitrary figures that come from the central government, and the employment prospects across the district, because we have considerable problems across the district with both employment. The report says that employment is falling, and also, if I can go back to infrastructure, we have major problems in terms of infrastructure provision, whether it be roads, rail, doctors, water, everything. We are supposedly in the driest part of the country. We're supposedly going to be operating with reduced water consumption for each house in the district. So why are we building loads of houses in an area where there's no water? So it would be nice to see some evidence on those, and where is that evidence and when will it be available to us?
Margaret.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I would first of all like to commend the officers who have obviously been working long hours on this. I haven't heard how many sleepless nights. But if you're anything like me, 4 o'clock in the morning is a good time at the moment with the light mornings. I have had concerns from my parishes already over this. I have directed some already to Rob Hobbs, but there are a couple of things that I think I need to say. One is, it is in a bit of a hurry. I think that we could have had a bit more time as members to look at it. The briefing on Friday, I did appreciate, but it was late notice. I couldn't stay behind to have any conversations with Rob because I did go to the ballet and it was brilliant. Some of my parishes are very concerned about the infrastructure where it says basically it will be done, but how will it be done? I have 4 primary schools in my area. I have one at Cockfield that does have capacity, the other 3 don't. I have one in Lavenham that has no green space, which makes life very difficult. I also have issues about the health provision. Long Melford and Lavenham surgeries, which are one, are not actually taking on any more patients. Bilderston, I notice, is going to have a huge possible influx of people. Bilderston
Councillor Maybury,
is at
may I
full
just intervene to
capacity.
say that we are only looking at policies here. We're not talking about individual wards.
But
Individual ward matters can be discussed privately with the officers. Sorry.
thank you, but I'm giving the reasons behind why I'm querying the infrastructure. It seems to me that there does need to be a lot of more work done on this, particularly with the infrastructure. I well remember being told last year, when I was in Cabinet, as the Cabinet Member for Communities, that we were deferring this policy, this document, until we knew where the money was coming from for this infrastructure. And that is what concerns me.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. Would this be a good point to ask Robert Hobbs to, or Councillor Arthey, to answer some of the questions that have been put forward?
I think Councillor Hinton's questions should be
Yes.
answered.
Can we now move to answering some of the questions?
Okay, yeah, I
please?
mean, I think that both of those questions were concerned with infrastructure, and I mean, I, of course, would draw members' attention to pages 53, 54 and 55, the infrastructure chapter, and policy SP08 on page 55, and particularly the last paragraph of that, which details how the required infrastructure will be provided. Talks about a combination of community infrastructure levy, CIL, planning obligations, developer contributions, and where appropriate, funding assistance from the councils and other provider organisations. On the issue of the evidence base, I think that perhaps Robert Hobbs is the best person to answer that part of Mr Hinton's question about what evidence base has been used, what's available, and I'm guessing that part of Councillor Hinton's question was also about if people are going to provide responses to this, they need the evidence available to make valid responses.
Robert Hobbs, could you please answer the question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So in respect to the evidence base, there will be an updated strategic housing and employment land availability assessment published alongside the consultation. So that was one question. We currently have a 2017 document on the website which informed the options consultation. In respect to the housing need, this is a standard methodology devised by the government which uses household projections and applies an affordability ratio to the calculation. That's available in the planning practice guidance which is online. We also have a strategic housing market assessment which has been updated, which provides further information on housing mix and tenure. We do have an employment land needs assessment published already on the website from 2016, which has informed the evolution of the plan alongside a sector needs assessment from 2017. So they're available now to have a look at. In respect to the infrastructure delivery plan, that will be published alongside the consultation, and that has been developed in collaboration with Suffolk County Council in particular around education. And that has involved a lot of feasibility study work about whether schools can in fact be extended, how much they can be extended by, and what the costs are, and those will be detailed in the infrastructure delivery plan. On the point about water, there is a policy LP23 on page 116 and 117 of the document, which seeks to use the additional optional standard of requiring 110 litres per person rather than 125 litres per person. So we have recognised the need to have more stringent targets for development. Thank you.
Councillor Hinton.
Madam Chairman, yeah, that's all very well, but if we're going to reduce the water consumption, are we going to do it by restricting the amount that's available for each house? How are we going to police that? And you've missed out one of the strategic parts of infrastructure, which is road transport. If you look at the route-based strategy that the Highways Agency produced in 2013, it says that it is expected that by 2030, the haven ports will have 37% of the UK's total deep-sea capacity. It's clear, therefore, that a significant and growing proportion of the UK's trades and goods, particularly in containers, will continue to use the haven ports. We already know that between Felixstowe and Harwich, there are something like 1 million truck movements a year. Felixstowe itself produces an extra 4 million on top of that of container movements. It all comes out down the roads, which, according to this document, says we are going to use as the arteries for our housing development. Well, if we're going to put a whole lot of domestic householders onto those roads as well, it's going to be even worse now, where you've got 4 or 5 mile long queues down the A12 every day. So where is the justification for putting the houses where they are when we haven't even got an infrastructure strategy, according to Mr. Hobbs, that actually even mentions roads or strategic road networks?
Do you want to come back on that, Robert?
Thank you, Chair. As we produce the plan, one of our key partners that we engage with is Highways England and with the County Council in respect of the strategic road network that Councillor Hinton refers to. And like many stakeholders, they will be a consultee on this plan, and we'll have further discussions with them as this is developed. In terms of the water, that is the building regulations and the policy. That's how we'll enforce through the planning application system that the requirements that are required in the plan are met.
Thank you.
Chairman, can I just say further to that, Mr Hinton might want to refer to pages 115 to 117, and again, particularly, you might want to look at the last paragraph of policy LP23, which does indeed talk about achieving 100 litres per person per day for residential properties.
Councillor Lindsay, did you have your hand up earlier? Did you have a comment? Okay, thank you.
Card, never. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Yes, I thank Councillor Maybury for her remarks, because that chimes exactly with what I and I think members of our group have been thinking, that it's been rushed and, you know, really, yes, I was delighted to take part in the working group, and the policies, I don't, you know, I think we could push harder on some of them, but I'm sort of more or less okay with that. but we didn't get the proposal maps till a few days ago. Now, the whole reason for, yes, I know there's been lots of consultations and it's been delayed. Well, the reason we were told for the delay till after the election was to allow new members to have their say in it. Now, I don't feel, all our group is new, and I don't feel we've had an opportunity to have our say. And reducing it to a scrum around Robert Hobbs' desk after the briefing isn't really a good way of going to our residents with this document. So I'd like to propose an amendment, if I may. I don't know if that's, I don't know if, can I read out my proposal?
Yes, read out your proposal.
Okay, so in the recommendation, it says 3.1 and 3.2. I'd like to insert a new 3.2 so that 3.2 becomes 3.3, if you see what I mean. And that would read that the corporate manager, strategic planning, before the proposals maps are approved for consultation, reviews and, where appropriate, redraws the proposals maps or adds caveats in consultation with any ward member that raises concerns about their ward by Thursday, the 11th of July, 2019. That might address some of the issues that Councillor Maybury, and I'm sure a lot of others, have so cogently raised.
Do you have a seconder for that proposal?
Do I have a seconder?
That amendment? Thank you. Tom Barker, do you have any comments on this amendment, please?
Through you, Chair. It rather depends what is meant by adds caveats. I guess it would be incredibly difficult to redraw the maps at this stage because that would require going back around the loop of sustainability appraisal and would add a significant delay into the process. So some clarification about what is meant by adding caveats would be useful to understand how deliverable that is.
Would you like to come back on that then with your definition?
Sure. So, I mean, if you look at there's things that could be, there's notes to all the allocations. There's little notes that say more, you know, for example, improving the footpath links to the site from X direction, extra funding required for a health centre, you know, schools. That's so it was those are what I call in caveats, the bit there. So if we can, so the allocation is there, but we're just asking for a bit more detail on what we're specifying in terms of infrastructure with those allocations. Does that help?
Can you come back on this, Tom?
Through you, Chair. It's quite difficult to envisage how that would actually play out in terms of every single settlement boundary or every single allocation. The allocations already talk about the infrastructure that is necessary in order for them to be delivered. So you'll see that there are policies specific to every single allocation. As part of those policies, it says education infrastructure would need to be improved, or healthcare facilities would need to be improved, and those kind of things are already within the proposals. And the provision of sustainable infrastructure to support the allocations is an inherent part of why they have been put forward and proposed as part of this preferred options. So it's not completely clear to me what that process will necessarily add. In essence, I think, just to remind, this is a consultation version of the plan, and the time in which councillors, town and parish councils, other stakeholders, members of your communities and individual residents can usefully add detail into the plan is during that consultation process. There is no harm in that coming out through the consultation process. Indeed, that is the entire purpose of this stage of the plan, is for the council to put its first preferred option out there with a genuine desire to engage with our local communities and ensure that when we get to the next stage, we have a plan that fully represents what councillors stakeholders and the wider community perceive is appropriate to deliver the housing needs, the economic growth and the protection of the environment that the plan is proposing.
Councillor Arthey, have you got comments?
Well, just to say, Chairman, I'm a little bit disappointed by Councillor Lindsay's proposal. This is a strategic document. We can't have individual wards reinterpreted by the ward members. I think he should use his skills, of which I'm sure he has many. He should use his skills to formulate a valid response to the consultation.
Councillors, can we use this time now to debate the amendment? Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair. I've got some sympathy with the... But it's also about these two viewpoints being presented by Councillor Maybury and Councillor Lindsay. But also, they seem to be at diametric odds to each other. On the one hand, we're saying the matter has been delayed, and it has been a long time we've been talking about the joint local plan, and another matter saying we're acting too quickly. Now, it can't be both. We have actually had, since 2017, I've reminded members at the briefing that, after all, they said we haven't seen this before. I'm sorry, many members who were here in 2017 have had a wodge of documents presented to them showing various options and various things. We've been through this in the previous stage of the consultation. Now, for the new members, those joining the council after the last election, there is time. And in fact, I note that the amendment proposed is till the Thursday, the 11th of July. I believe the consultation is actually starting after that date anyway, and the consultation is proposed to be extended by a further 2 weeks. Now, if we're talking about 3 weeks to the start of the consultation and 10 weeks of the consultation, it seems to me there's more than sufficient time for people to catch up to date. And when I say catch up to date, I have to say that these site allocations have not come out of the blue. Members, admittedly of the previous council, but it has been in the public domain, have had the option to look at these allocations in their previous versions as a strategic housing land allocation assessment and a strategic housing market assessment, SHLA and SHMA, respectively, pardon me. Anyway, all I'm saying is we can't argue both delay and that we're moving too quickly. We've had a delay and yet we're still moving too fast. This is a document that we need. If we don't get this out, it lengthens the length of time we might not have a local plan, and therefore we become vulnerable to speculative applications. And let's face it, there are people out there only too happy to bring them forward. The longer we delay, the longer it is that we are not able to protect the residents of the very communities that we represent, of all members. You can't have it both ways. It needs to be done now. If we either trust in the consultation process or what the heck are we doing?
Anyone else on the amendment? Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, well, I fully agree with the last speaker. This has gone on for far too long. It certainly hasn't been rushed. We're at a stage now where we're going out for consultation only, and this is what we're asking people to give their views on. And I'd respectfully say to the members that most people who respond to this will be people that would have an interest in certain little areas, either their own areas or something that they're involved with. So these will be picked up in those 8 weeks, and I hope we take Councillor Carpendale's proposal to extend it to 10 weeks, and I'll second that if that's what you're doing, which will give plenty of time. I think to delay it now for any longer for any other reason wouldn't be right. The safeguards are in. I have some sympathy with my colleague, Councillor Maybury, but that will give enough time for people, members and the community who want to comment. They'll comment on their areas mainly only and come back with their views. And I think that's what we want at this stage, Madam Chairman. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I will second your proposal for 10 weeks.
Thank you. Any other comments for debate? Thank you. Councillor Lindsay, would you like to make any further comments before we go?
Well, just to
the
say
vote?
it won't be delayed because, as been pointed out, it's going to consultation after the 11th of July, as I understand. So we're not talking about delay. We're talking about more time for members to feed in before it goes out. No change in the date going out.
Do members not have that ability already, simply by being able to speak to officers at any time?
Councillor Arthey, anything you'd like to say on the amendment, please?
Thank you, Chairman. No, I think I've probably said it. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Ward.
Yeah, it's just in response to the last thing that Councillor Lindsay said about the date, his final date of the 11th of July. The problem with that is, inevitably, that as I think Tom Barker has mentioned, there will be a necessity to work on anything that comes up in that period. The sustainability appraisal work will probably need to be redone. And it'll have a huge knock-on effect on the ability to start the public consultation on the 22nd of July. And we really don't want to do that. I cannot see that there's anything that can be achieved in this intervening period between now and the 11th of July that cannot be achieved during that main consultation period. And we really, as Councillor McCraw has eloquently explained, we really do not want or can afford to have any further delay in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Okay, I think we're ready to move to a vote on the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. 3, 4. 4. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The amendment is lost. The amendment is lost. Can we return to the original proposal, please? Has anyone got any comments on the original proposal, please? Councillor Beer.
Period. Can we change that to 10 weeks, as Councillor Carpendale asked for? And if that's acceptable?
10 weeks was my proposal.
Oh, was it yours? I heard it from Councillor Carpendale.
That's the recommendations to put it out to consultation in July for a period of 10 weeks.
Well done.
Fine, thank you. Any other comments before we move to the vote? Councillor Mabry.
Thank you, Chairman. There is one comment that I would like to make, and if you wish to look at page 74, it will help you. I was absolutely delighted to hear Amber Rudd, MP, on BBC TV this morning talking about disability-friendly homes. This is something that I have raised at every opportunity, and our Chief Executive will back me on that. This is something that we desperately need, and it's not just for the older generations, it is for those people who find themselves in a situation that they never ever expected. So I am delighted that, as I call it, my Homes for Life will be in this document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bosby, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think one of the concerns that a lot of our villages will have is that the amount of building that we're going to be doing out in Babergh might change the character of the towns and villages. And I think one of the principles that we should put in here is that we will aim to protect or at least enhance the character of our towns and villages. I think it's crucial. It defines Babergh to what it is. Each village is different, and I think each village wants to stay different. It doesn't want to be swamped by a different type of housing, different type of development. So I think that's an important principle that we should put in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arthey, would you like to comment on that?
Well, Chairman, I wasn't actually going to comment on that. I was going to respond to Councillor Mabry.
Yes.
And just to say, yes, I absolutely agree with her. And in the working groups, it was something that generated quite a lot of discussion, support for that policy.
Councillor McClaw.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose we move straight to the proposal. This is a consultation. We could talk endlessly on this. That's what the consultation's for. Let the people speak and we will listen.
Do you have a seconder for that?
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Thank you.
We need to move to the vote now, but we need to make sure that you...
So didn't Councillor Ward want to say anything?
They've moved to the vote now, so
Right, okay.
we need to just add in the amendment, so be approved for a 10-week consultation period.
Okay.
That's the
Even
amendment.
though he's already...
Just for clarification. Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
So for clarification, we're just going to add to point 3.1 of the recommendation that we will be having a 10-week consultation period.
Yeah, that's fine. All those in favour?
So all those in favour of the recommendations, please show. How many? 20. Oh, carried. Sorry. And all those against, please show. 3 against. Thank you. So that's carried. Thank you. So we'll move on now to item 9. BC 19.8, publication of the Babergh Housing Delivery Test Action Plan. I would like to invite Councillor Arthey, Cabinet Member for Planning, to introduce paper BC 19.8 and to move the recommendations in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this will be a little bit shorter for my presentation. Just a few little points. The Housing Delivery Test, HDT, was published in February 2019, and it identified Babergh District as achieving 88% of the total number of dwellings required over the period 1st of April 2015 to the 31st of March 2018. As a consequence of not meeting 95% of the housing requirement, the Council is required to publish a Housing Delivery Test Action Plan within 6 months from February 2019, so that's by August of 2019, which should incorporate a range of measures that will support increased housing delivery. If you've had a chance to read it all, and it is quite a document, I would first highlight to you the general recommendations, which are on page 43 and page 44, particularly paragraphs 3.4 and 3.5, and especially the 15 bullet points on page 44. So if you've all followed that, I have a paper copy here. There are the 15, they're not actually numbered, the 15 bullet points under 3.5. Finally, I'd also like to bring your attention to the CIL section, which is on page 38 at 2.45 to 2.49. In the round, this is something that we have to do, and it's been done, and I propose the recommendations for its adoption. Thank you.
Councillor Davis, thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think this paper fully justifies why we need to get on as quickly as possible and produce a new joint local plan. We need to have the ability to bring forward sites that are deliverable, and so we don't end up in a position where we fail to deliver and have to produce action plans like this and not produce the numbers that we have as our targets. This is a good document, and it gives us a framework for working forward and understanding why we have stalled sites and actions that we can take place to resolve them, but we do need to proceed with our plan so that we don't end up in a situation where we're forever having to look back and review why things have been stalled. At least we'll have sites in the future that we can take forward in the full certainty that we know that they are deliverable and that the infrastructure will be there to support them. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Councillor Hinton.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick one, and it does talk about the data was, Councillor Arthur's already said that we are 88% or something compliant with this. But it also says that the data was produced for the HDTAP focusing on major housing developments on sites of 10 dwellings and above. How many houses did we build outside of 10 homes, in other words, smaller than 10 homes, and what would that have done to the overall figure? Because I suspect that it would probably have done quite a lot, because a lot of our development across the district is in smaller sites than 10 homes even.
Chairman, I'm sure there is an answer to that question, and I'm going to look to Robert Hobbs to see if he has it at hand.
Thank you for you, Chair. The 88% refers to all dwellings. The 88% refers to all dwellings, not just major developments. For you, Chair, the Housing Delivery Test Action Plan focuses on delivery of major developments, as these ones are where we need to understand more how those developments come forward. But in terms of the actual figures that provided the government that go into the Housing Delivery Test, all completions over the past 3 years go into that calculation.
Councillor Hinton.
So, Madam Chairman, we can assume that paragraph 4.4 is completely incorrect in this report, because it says the data was produced for the HDPA focusing on major housing on sites of 10 dwellings and above. Well, obviously, if it applies to all dwellings, then we're doing a different set of criteria to what the government is requiring us to.
Councillor Hobbs, Robert Hobbs, do you have a comment on that? Can you come back on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the data for the Housing Delivery Test Action Plan, which is what we're talking about here, was focusing on major developments of 10 dwellings or more. The Housing Delivery Test results, which the action plan follows from, looks at every single completion, as I've just said. So that's where the 88% comes from. So there's two separate exercises. One is the Housing Delivery Test, which sets out what the percentage is that we have to follow. And then, as Councillor Arthur alluded to, because Babergh's delivery was less than 95%, an action plan therefore needed to be produced. And in producing that action plan, we specifically focused on developments over 10 dwellings in terms of what can be done to make sure that the delivery is continued.
Councillor Hurren.
Chairman, yes, thank you. Page 44, they're not numbered, but 4 up from the bottom, something that struck me a couple of days ago. Compulsory purchase orders. Is this a threat, or are we suggesting that we genuinely buy up half of Chiltern to get that planning application moving? And does somebody know where the money might come from? Just a bit of clarification, please.
Robert Hobbs, can you clarify this?
Thank you, Chair. This was identified also through the Homes and Housing Strategy, which was adopted by Council. And effectively what it's identifying is that is one mechanism that can be used, but that would require further exploration at this stage. Councillor
Ward.
As Cabinet Member for Finance, I can assure Councillor Hurren I don't think we've quite got the money to buy up half of Chiltern, but...
Seriousness, is this an idle threat, or could we really do it?
Councillor Arthur, did you want to come back on this?
If he wants an answer, we could, but I'm sure we won't.
Councillor Busby, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the big problems that we have with development stalling is it's down to the developer, primarily. The question we have to ask ourselves is what do we do to encourage the developer to develop that site when they've probably got a handful of others around the county that they could do rather than ours. To me, the two things that are missing in here to encourage development from stalling is one, we should be building more houses ourselves. If we were building 200-300 of the 400 houses that are required, or 500 houses required, we wouldn't be so dependent upon the developers. We can start then saying to developers that you need to build these out or you're not going to get planning permission. We're not desperate to have those developments come through. But on the other side of the coin, if we're building more council houses or affordable houses, we don't need the developments to do it. We shouldn't be asking, I don't believe, developers to contribute 35% affordable housing. Why should they take that kind of hit on their profit? If we reduce that because we built the houses ourselves to 10%, suddenly our sites are more favourable than all the ones around the county that are demanding 35%. We have to look at how do we encourage the developers to build the sites. And those two things I don't think are in here. We should build more houses ourselves and reduce the affordable housing content.
Councillor Arthur, is this something you'd like to come back on?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily the build the houses ourselves is, I don't quite see that as an answer. I mean, I'm not quite sure if Mr Busby is sort of saying, well, we should go in and compulsorily purchase the site and build them all as council houses, which is a little bit like the other suggestion. But as far as addressing the issue of stalled sites with developers, I think the answer to that, the proposed solutions to that problem, are on page 42 and 43. And indeed, when we're looking at sites where they have been stalled for some time, that's on page 43, the big C, just after the top of the page. Solution 3, late stage stallers. You will see there that what we need to do is engage with all developers to try and understand what is needed to ensure that the permission gets built out. So, I mean, this engagement with developers is fundamental to the recommendations in here.
Chief Executive would like to say something here.
Thank you, Chairman. Just in relation to Councillor Busby's question, I just wanted to add the first aspect of your question. Page 44, about halfway down that list of bullet points. Yeah, developing new private homes through council-owned housing companies and developing 214 new council houses in Babergh. So part of your request, I suppose, is in there. The second aspect more relates to the joint local plan.
But to some extent, you said it. It's halfway down a list of bullet points that aren't the key points. To me, if that should be the major statement. If we're going to build 50% of all our housing requirement, that should be that should be right up front. It isn't. It's halfway down a set of bullet points that are nice and flowery. And Clive, that's we're going to talk to developers. That's not a solution. That's a pint down the pub on a Friday night. It's not a solution. It shouldn't be in a document.
Councillor Ward.
Yeah, actually, Councillor Busby, I just wanted to pick up on what the Chief Executive said. If you turn to page 47, items 8 and 9, you will see it covers both the private homes that we want to develop through our own housing company, and also the HRA homes that we want to build. It's got numbers in there. These are numbers that we've looked at and we believe are achievable. Your target's great as an aspiration, but we need to work out what we can really afford. But being no mistake, we do have aspirations, plans to build both open market and affordable housing through the general fund and also through the housing revenue account. So we are trying to do this as much as we can with the money we have available, but we're not going to be able to build the numbers that you're talking about. We are going to require private developers to provide the lion's share of house building in the districts.
Councillor McCraw.
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of points of clarification. Am I correct in thinking that this is a legal requirement of this council, that we have to do this? And second, is it likely to be improved in any appreciable way by our spending a long time talking about it? No, but I'm just conscious of the fact that, frankly, the words blindingly obvious seem to come to mind. We have in fact, we have to deliver a document according to the principles that the government have in their infinite wisdom decided we should, and then we have to try and make it stick. And yes, I appreciate all the points made. It is not within our gift. But we have to put something down. We can't just say we're going to take them down the pub, for example. We have to be able to come up with some actual structured arguments that will meet the test that is required for our own housing delivery test action plan. And I suggest that that's what we've done here, and we shouldn't waste any more time on this.
So, do you think we're ready for a vote? Oh. Councillor Hinton, did you have something final to say?
I won't take up a lot of time, but just one of the things that does spring to mind is the top of page 31, where it talks about builders are in a position to exercise control over sales rates, as rivals are limited in their opportunity to offer customers different types of housing tenure. Well, as long as the builders are in control, we're screwed. So are we making any sort of representations to government to allow us to put something on a planning permission that gives us the ability to force a developer to get on with it?
Councillor Arthey, did you want to make any comment?
Well, I have to say, I read that more as a statement of fact, not as a sort of an action, and I think it's a fair statement of fact.
I think we're ready to move on now. Can we move to the vote? Can I have people show for the motion, please?
Those against.
And can I now see those against the recommendation, please? And any abstentions? I think we have one abstention. Thank you. It's carried. Now on to item 10. BC 19.9, nominations for appointment of directors to the board of BDC Suffolk Holdings Limited. I would like to invite Councillor Busby, Vice Chair, BDC Suffolk Holdings Limited, to introduce paper BC 19.9 and to move the recommendation in the report. Thank you, Councillor Busby.
Thank you, Chair. I've made a few notes. No. This report proposes the election of 2 new directors. Is it something I said? Councillor John Hinton and Councillor Elizabeth Malvisi to the board of Babergh District Council, Suffolk Holdings, to fill posts which were vacated by former councillors Nick Ridley and Alan Ferguson. The election of new directors to the holding company will ensure robust governance of the company structure is retained. And it says here that I'll look forward to the opportunity of working with them both on the holding board. That's what it says here. So can I propose that? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Holt. Want to say anything? Thank you. To the vote then, please. So those for accepting these, thank you.
No, that's carried.
Thank you, it's carried. Items 11 and 12, appointment of substitute to the Shared Revenues Partnership Committee and councillor appointments. I'm taking items 11 and 12 together. These items have been tabled in the papers tonight. Are there any other changes, please? Councillor Ward.
Yes, I just wanted to inform members that there was an omission at the list of appointments that we approved at our last council meeting, and I just wanted to add that Councillor Owen will be one of the representatives on the Gypsy and Traveller Steering Group, which I believe you are already aware of. But so that's the only addition. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't need to take a vote on this. The recommendation is simply for noting. So we'll move on. Thank you. And item 13 has been withdrawn. So I think we're ready to close the meeting. Thank you. The next meeting is Tuesday, 23rd July at 5:30. Thank you and have a good evening. Well done.